and more importantly, how they need to hear them and remember them. I've known Francesca Maximé for 30 years, since we were freshman roommates in college.
That's
And
scary.
I know, right? And I am so thrilled that she's here with me now. Francesca, welcome to TC After Dark.
Hey, Tease, it's good to see you.
It is so good to see you. I can't even believe it. Let's start with you, because I want to give everybody who doesn't know your background a bio from your resume. So this is from a bio from your website, from maximeclarity.com. Francesca Marguerite Maximé is a Haitian Dominican Italian American somatic experiencing practitioner, certified mindfulness meditation teacher, certified indigenous focusing oriented therapy for complex trauma well-being guide, relational life therapy couples and life coach, and poet author in Brooklyn, New York. So when I tell you this woman is wise, and when I tell you she is accomplished, I am not kidding you. Let's start with you, please. We have difficult conversations ahead, but I want people to know who you are and what you do. So how did you get from like our little selves living in Pennypacker to
I
where you
know.
are now? What is that journey?
God, I was in Fortune 500 companies for a few years doing sales and marketing. And then I, started doing journalism in Boston. And so then I was a TV news anchor and a reporter for 20 years, almost doing, all kinds of international and local stories and everything from, the Catholic Church abuse scandal to Occupy Wall Street to 9/11 to, all the other things that are happening that still happen around the world. I was working for a Nigerian station that we were talking about Boko Haram all the time. So, I did that for a while, and I'd say, I don't know, around the time of the campaign and the election with our, current administration, I just sort of started to veer away from that and pull away from that. And I was doing some pieces for PBS NewsHour at the time. And I really wasn't liking sort of what was happening with even the coverage in there. And I just felt I need a break. I need to pull away. So I went on a lot of meditation retreats. I learned these somatic experiencing tools. I learned these mindfulness meditation tools. I learned how to unpack what 20 years of talk therapy hadn't been able to uncork for me, which is I knew stuff about my family of origin that was, problematic for me. I mean, I'm multi-ethnic, as you said, Haitian, Dominican, Italian American, but I grew up with, my white Italian mom, who's a doctor, as you know, the doctor's canon. I grew up with, pretty much a experience that looked pretty milk toast in some ways from the outside looking in. Internally, there was, of course, a lot of like grappling with these different pieces of my identity that really showed up when we showed up at Harvard. I was invited to minority pre-freshman weekend, and I stayed for regular pre-freshman weekend, but I was there for that
Right.
whole week. And like, you wouldn't know, right? Like, and so,
Wow. I don't even think I knew that then. That's
yeah,
amazing.
but I'm
Yeah.
like, why do you even, and so then I was like, wait, I'm like multi-ethnic. I don't even say I'm
Wait,
multiracial.
did you not think of yourself as that then? In other
Nobody
words, like
The first time I had to
just one
think
wasn't an
about
issue.
race, because race is a construct, we know it's false. It doesn't have any legitimacy. It's just, I mean, and if you don't, then you gotta read Linnaeus and all
Let's
these.
learn. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not even a thing. It's not genetic. It's all this false propagation. That's the fake news. Anyway, so I've always said I was multi-ethnic and Haitian, Dominican, Italian American. I put that in my essay. I wrote about that for
Right.
my Harvard application essay
Proudly. Right.
about
Right.
my identity, but somehow that read to them as, I don't know, too complex, or because of, if you learn the history of the United States, if you have one drop of African blood, of Black blood, then you're Black, or which again is in service to capitalism, racism, and division, and all these other kinds of things. But my self-concept wasn't about that. My lived experience wasn't about that. And when I got to Harvard, people are like talking about things like that I had no knowledge of, no information. I'm like, I don't know what a step show is. I don't know what, those aren't the foods I eat. That's not, and it's okay. Like I'm there with you, but it just wasn't that I'm familiar with it yet. Right.
Yeah.
And so then I stayed for quote unquote regular, pre-freshman weekend, where they're just all the, white kids, where I guess maybe you were there, I don't know. And had a great time. And it was just like a week out of high school, who needed it anyway, where I spent in Cambridge. And I got to know that there was already sort of this division. Now, that being said, you need to have separate spaces for Black, Indigenous people of color, for, different kinds of groups, Jewish people, people of Asian descent, Korean descent, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? There needs to be that. I don't, that's not the issue. The issue is I kind of felt like I was, uh, uh, like taken by surprise, you know,
Yeah.
by it, because I hadn't really addressed my self-concept in that way yet. And I felt like I was being othered and defined by categorizations and having to check off boxes that I didn't have to examine before, which then I had to examine. And as an on-air person for the last 20 years, visually, you know, I mean, please, you're no stranger to knowing how many women of color have been like, you know, yanked off the air because their hair
Yeah.
wasn't right. And how many people did, you
Right.
know, not get promoted and not get jobs because they couldn't wear their natural hair or whatever. So, you know, there's a lot of ways in which white body supremacy perpetuates, you know, oppression in all kinds of different ways. And
For
so
sure.
it's all been a learning for me, this whole process also. I was not woke or waking just because I'm multi-ethnic. I just was dealing with the intersectionality of being, frankly, in my case, often fetishized around gender and being quote unquote the spicy Latina type of person, as opposed to being like, you know, this multi-ethnic embodied person, which, you know, we all have, whatever, we all want to be seen for just who we really are.
And do you think that brought you to where you are now? Like, what is somatic experiencing practitioner? When you say somatic therapy, what does somatic mean?
So a lot of what I've done is understand the nervous system, how it works in neuroscience and neurophysiology. You were what, a biology major?
I was never
Yeah.
used a drop of it, but come on, I'll
Well,
try.
yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not like at all about that. But so, but what I've learned is that we have a nervous system. All mammals have a nervous system. So we come out of this, like, you know, I always think of like a platypus. We always, you know, we come out of the water and onto the land, and you know,
Yeah.
and Homo sapiens sapiens, we're the ones who are aware that we're aware. So we have a neocortex, a prefrontal cortex. We also have this limbic system, midbrain, and we also have the amygdala, fight, flight, freeze, fix, fornicate, fawn, whatever response, the fear response. And that the first trigger is the survival, the fight, flight, freeze, basically, for shorthand response. And that the limbic brain is where everything kind of gets stored about meaning, in terms of whatever gets fused on our conditioning based on however we're growing up. So, for example, if I knew that when I would speak up in my family of origin, I would get slapped, I may not speak up. And then I grow up to learn that speaking up is not bad. I live this way. And people think that I don't have self confidence or I don't get promoted or whatever. But it's because I learned an adaptive strategy when I was a kid that then I continue to lose long after, because I'm not able to jump in with my prefrontal cortex and my neocortex to say, oh, you needed that then, but not now. And that the nervous system piece, the somatic experiencing practitioner piece, is about understanding what happens to me when I'm being called on the carpet, for example, to speak up and I'm not. And I may notice I have a sinking in my belly. I may notice that there's some kind of like gray cloud I feel looming over me. I may want to kind of pull back and slink away and disappear and evaporate or dissociate. And the somatic experiencing is checking in with your actual body sensations and starting to get to learn what's happening with your nervous system, and not the story you tell yourself about yourself, to find out what's underneath it. Ah, this is a trigger, this situation that's happening here now, 2020, whatever.
Wow.
Oh, this is a trigger for when I used to get hit when I would speak up before. Ah, that's why I want to disappear. Ah, notice what that feels like in my body. Oh, let's sit and breathe a little bit with this. Let's check this out. Let's see what's here. Is what I'm believing and connecting with this still real and true today? Can I do what mammals do, which is orient to my present environment and say, actually, I'm in a boardroom right now. Nobody's going to hit me. There's no like huge repercussions around like, you know, I'm going to die.
Speaking up.
Right.
Yeah.
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 And like, how much of this can I enter into one molecule of, you know, stepping into this place of I'm actually here, I'm grounded, feeling my feet on the floor, feeling my seat in the chair. It's a somatic awareness, so
Wow.
that you let your nervous system know, because your nervous system is programmed. It's like the computer that you get when you buy it at the store. It comes with pre-installed hardware. Sometimes after a while, you got to update the hardware. I mean, update the software, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what we're trying to do, because it's going to run the same program unless you download something new. And you can't download something new unless you know that you need to do that, because the other one is outdated. And most people assume that what they're inheriting in that habit patterning, that conditioning, is something that defines their personality as who they are, but it's not. And so if you think it's who you are, then you're stuck, meaning that you won't go there and get curious about it and bring your neocortex online to try to explore and be the Homo sapiens sapiens, the one who's aware, then you can dig in, then you can start doing stuff. But none of
I've
that's
been,
usually possible
yeah.
unless somebody believes in their own basic goodness, like there's nothing wrong with me, like I'm, spirit embodied, like I'm just sort of this human that's on this planet, on this journey, and I'm fine or whatever, because we're born with original sin. It's drilled down in this Judeo-Christian, world. Like, you're terrible. My mom grew up as a Catholic with like a black mark on her soul, and your world was about doing for others. And, and then I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right. So my mentor, Jack Hornfield, who's a big meditation teacher people may know, and also a clinical psychologist, says, the circle of compassion begins with you. So you start with your basic goodness. You start to understand your conditioning, your programming from your family of origin, and in this case, in terms of being anti-racist, structurally, societally, and whatever. And then you start to bring into, I'm aware that I have these reactions. And then my limbic brain, my midbrain, I have all these stories that go along with it because it reminds me of what happened when I was a kid. And now I can check in with my body sensations to ground myself and realize and reorient, hey, it's 2020, it's not 1975, and I can be different. I am someone who has a capacity and resources that I didn't used to have. I'm not in this alone.
Well, and that's what, when I see what you've been saying online about learning to be anti-racist, about making that step as an individual first, that really, really spoke to me, because I think that there are a lot of sort of well-meaning, as I would have said, white people. You have taught me to say white-bodied people, which I like. But there are so many people that are like, wait, but I'm nice. I'm not racist, but I think you need to do that work to look inside and work to be, what is the term? Emma taught me, passive empathy. That I have a passive empathy. I'm nice. I'm not actively racist, but I need to work to be actively anti-racist. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
big difference.
We all do.
And you have, yeah, but you have this incredible program called AREA, Anti-Racism Response Ability, Embodiment, Accountability, and Action Group. And you invite people like me, you invite white-bodied people to say, I don't get it, help. And that's sort of unusual right now, because I think a lot of people are just really afraid of saying the wrong thing. And
I
you've
know.
opened up yourself to say, ask.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of amazing. What
Ask
what
me
kind of
anything.
things do you get? What do you get from people when you open it up for questions?
Oh, I feel so overwhelmed. I feel so helpless. I feel so guilty. I feel frozen. I feel stuck. I don't know what to do. Um, I think someone said, this is unbearable, and I'm like, okay.
How do you see people changing?
Well, when they realize that that it's a sensation, I'm like, don't believe all the hype about whatever your critical inner voice is telling you about you. You're fine. I already told you, you're grounded in basic goodness, and you have heavily, conditioned minds and actions and habit patterns, which, if left unchecked and we don't have an awareness of, can play out in what my friend says, benevolent racism, or as your daughter says, passive empathy.
Passive empathy.
And
Yeah.
that's what they call white silence, or whatever. And so we just retreat, and we feel like, which is so funny because somebody calls it white racial fragility, as opposed to like white fragility, because white fragility is the term
Yes,
we've
of
all heard.
course.
But it's like white racial fragility, you're fierce in every other way, but about this, I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Right. And so people, so the way that changes can be made is, I always say, all right, let's check in. Just kind of what I was explaining about the somatic experiencing. Let's check in with what's going on inside. What is going on inside? Let's slow down. When you think of watching that 9-minute video of George Floyd, when you think of sitting at home being an EMT, and when you think, what if Emma's an EMT and she's in her living room and cops come in without permission and shoot her 20 times and kill her, like Breonna Taylor? I mean, when you think of that, what happens inside your body? Notice what the sensations are. Start naming them. Is
Yeah.
it a fieriness? Is it a tightness? Is it a sinking? And yeah, those tears. Yeah, and right. And that's okay. Can we allow ourselves to be heartbroken? This is the work. We have in this culture, this comfort culture, where we don't honor grief, we don't honor sadness, we don't honor our own experience, because we think we always have to be fancy and out there and on point, because that's how white body supremacy works and hurts white people, right? That's why all these neuroses come up. Why do you think, more white people are dying? Because of opioid addiction, alcohol, and suicide. We're the only like advanced society where like the dominant population basically is dying more than it used to because nobody's happy in this system. But people get killed the way I just described when they're in Black and brown bodies because of systems of oppression, like, you know, the police, the policing, the school to prison pipeline, and all the things that create an othering, that create that piece. So for white-bodied folks in the area group, for example, when they're sensing into that, notice that. What is it like to be with the sadness? What is it like to be with the part of you? How old is it feeling in there? How, what is this familiar? Like, is there anything familiar about that? Does this remind you of anything? Yeah, like when I was, helpless, or when I was whatever. It makes me feel like I don't know what to do, or I want to go in and fix it, or I wanted to take it back, or and you start to just be more compassionate to your own actual experience and name it. And then feel my feet on the floor, feel my seat in the chair. Let me look around. Okay, great. This feels unbearable. How unbearable is it right now? I'm in my living room. I'm okay. Is it okay that I can be with my grief? Can I be with my sadness? Because this whole piece, mindfulness, people I think got it wrong. Mindfulness isn't about this Zen state. It's about being able to relate to our experience in a different way. And that is based on having a certain distance from this awareness, like I started with our prefrontal cortex or neocortex, with our emotions and sensations and stories. So can I be aware of the fact that I'm having an experience where there's some emotion arising, some sadness, some grief, some empathy, some compassion, some despair maybe, right? That I feel like this is wrong and somehow maybe I'm part of this system, but I didn't know I was, or what to do. And can we just be with that and make space for that rather than have
And
to solve it right away?
when you, after working with the individual, then action steps should be taken, right? I mean, that's the next thing. I mean, do you talk about or think about, or have you given
Not
advice on individuals or corporations or businesses? I mean, so many people are coming out with different statements or
they're
different
garbage.
mantras. Is that what you think? Is that, I mean,
I think,
yeah.
well, because you're not embodied. When it comes from the inside out, it's easy. You will naturally do the right thing. You will naturally listen. You'll have humility. You'll give your money to the people who are already saying, the right things and doing the right work, especially like listen to Black trans women. you know like don't try to come up with this thing. Don't start some foundation. That's not helpful. That's white savior complex, all that kind of stuff. We don't want pity and tears. We want you to work with the parts of you that feel triggered, the younger parts, the parts of you that feel like they're stuck, that get frozen, that feel overwhelmed. It's inner child work for white people. It's that piece of then like making friends with all our different parts inside of us first, and then feeling you can cultivate an ability to tolerate the discomfort around holding and being with, not holding like holding on to, but recognizing and allowing and creating space for, wow, there's this experience of sadness I'm having now. And mindfulness teachings, Buddhist teachings, ancient wisdom teachings teach us that nothing is permanent, personal, or perfect. It's not about you. White lenses are myopic and small and narrow. Collectivist lenses are people of culture, the global majority. So we're held not only by one another, but by the whole earth. And we're not just in this by ourselves, but it feels very heavy to white people when they're trying to lean into this work because they think that they have to do the thing. What they can do is give your money to Black Lives Matter, give your money to the bail fund, give up your seat on the board like Alex Ohanian did on Reddit, so that, he's the guy who's the tech founder and entrepreneur who happens to be married to, as he says, the GOAT, Serena Williams, the greatest of all time, like the tennis player,
Yes,
friend in my head, and like the person that I am when I am fierce on the court with
I
my
think you might
forehand.
be best friends. You
Well,
might be best friends.
In my
I'm
head,
just saying.
in my head, in my head. In my head, but like he gave up his seat on the board of Reddit because he wants to make sure that there's a Black man or woman or person of color in there. Like these are the kinds of things that we have to do, because it's been said that for white folks, equality feels like oppression. When you're giving up something that you shouldn't have had in the first place, or you only inherited because of a structure of oppression, that made that happen. It's a lot of like mansplaining. Like guys can say all this bullshit and it's garbage. And then like they'll be in the boardroom. You've been there, you know, you've had to like, you know, bite your tongue when people are just like, but you know, they respect you because they know you're smart and all of that. But it's like their, what do they call it? Their mediocrity, you know what I mean? Like is like,
Yeah.
you know, they fall up, you know, and it's the same thing structurally that we need to like step away from. So those are some of the things white people can do, and listen and be humble and listen to your Black friends and just listen to understand. Don't listen to try to fix or do. Your action step is non-doing, but empathetic attunement and presence and your ability to regulate your own emotions and your own nervous system when you feel like you're checking out or dissociating. And that's a practice.
I feel that people who have access to people like you, so people that have access to people who are thoughtful and can talk them through it, I feel very lucky to be able to call you and say, you know, Francesca, will you come on? Will you talk this out? I feel like there might be a chance. Do you know what I mean? Like we could get there. What about so many people in the country that just will not ever do that? Do you think that we can affect change enough that the systems will make them change? Do you know does that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of like well-intentioned folks that, well, my friend Lamorato and says, you know, not everybody's going to be saved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like not everybody's going to get woke. And I say, don't try to get woke. It's waking. We're waking. We're in this process. Right? Yeah. It's all, we're our process. I mean, we're dying from the day we're born anyway. You know what I'm saying? So like get used to dying, meaning like white people have this fear of death, but you know, like meaning that, you know, we're so attached to everything. Big deal. You know what I mean? And that's why it's like, who cares? I mean, I care about life. Black lives matter. Yeah, of course, because dignity matters, integrity matters, being able to have respect for everyone. But when you've been living in a country founded on Black bodies being 3/5 of a person, not having homes now because they were denied equity, denied loans, denied, you know, the financial, you know, wealth that was afforded to white people just because of this construct, because of you know, redlining and gerrymandering and all these kinds of different things in these policies, then, you know, you have to kind of check and see. So to your point, A, not everybody's going to be saved. B, for the people who are well-intentioned, who have access to either me or listen to a podcast or anything, read your books, learn the real American history, find out how this country is founded. No school teaches this. I mean, maybe a couple, but really no. There are tons of classes out there that you can take. You can read Ibram Kendi, you can read Dr. Joy DeGruy, you can read Layla Saad, you can take classes from whiteawake.org, you can go to the People's Institute, you can go to the Racial Equity Institute, you can go to my webpage, maximeclarity.com/resources, and there are a gazillion organizations there if you want to do the anti-racist work, a gazillion. And you can call me if you want to, but there's a million people. I'm not the expert. I'm just somebody who was in the dark, even though I was multi-ethnic, who started the process of waking up and knows how to regulate my nervous system enough and knows how to work with the stories I tell myself enough to be able to not feel like I'm going to get stuck in the quicksand.
It's like how I started, that you can put into words what others need to hear, and in a way that they remember. You've always been like that, Fran. I mean, you literally have always been like that since we were in our late teens and first met. You just have a way about you. And I think your voice, which was, you know, maybe you were an English major, right? Are we now talking about majors? Right. So your voice, which was words on a page and it was poetry, I think has really now found a very, very incredible place. I really do. And I'm very, very grateful for your time. I also want to mention your own podcast, which is called Rerooted.
Yeah.
Rerooted. Yeah. So go find Francesca there. One other quote that I heard from you online, which I just thought was great, is that we need to undo racism from the inside out. And that seems like what you are all about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I really want to call people in, right? Like magnetize and mobilize. That's my philosophy. Magnetize and mobilize. I want to be the magnet for this work. Like, I'm not going to bite your head off. Like, no. I was there too. I was one of the ones who said all lives matter. I was that person. I didn't get it. I get why you think that. And it's, you know, I get why that isn't like an okay thing to say, but while it's also kind of still true on the other hand, but why Black Lives Matter. and I didn't always have that, you know what I mean?
I said something the other day on air that that it's like if you're holding a cancer fundraiser. And so it's all about curing a certain kind of cancer. And someone runs through and is like, people die of heart disease too. And everyone's like, that is not the point. Like,
Yeah.
So it's just, it's learning.
I'm like, this isn't the trauma Olympics. The point is, and I just want to leave with this thought because I know we're at time. We are talking about structural systems of oppression. When we were in college, I remember I was at the time when I knew about Rosie's Place homelessness, a woman named Kip Tiernan. She worked with Poor People's United Fund and all of the women in Boston that my mom helped also. And the point was, cui bono, who benefits, and who gets to set the terms of the debate? Who is the person who gets to frame the questions that we're asking? And along those lines, these are structural issues that live in our bodies and have for centuries. And so what I'm getting at is these are not things that you are going to be able to just fix or solve, to your point about action items, in one fell swoop. However, collectively, when we come to more awareness and insight about it internally, and we can undo all of the shame and things like that we feel about that, knowing again, we're grounded in basic goodness, from that place we can come forward and you'll naturally start to see more clearly, which is really the gift of what I think is enlightenment that everybody wants anyway.
Francesca Maximé, magnetize and what is it? Mobilize.
Yes.
Magnetize. You have always been a magnet to me. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You're the best.
All right, Tease, take care.
Truly, you're the best. Love you. Mwah.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.